What's up, Flexagram? How you doing? I hope everyone's having a blessed 2018. I wanted to start my year off right like a lot of people I know. So the reason for this is I'm deciding to basically speak on a different life topic every month for the rest of the year. So one topic a month. If anyone knows me personally, they know I'm big on personal growth and just always growing. So I figured I'd share some of the things I've learned in my life in the last few years and try and share with you guys. Yeah. So the recurring topic that keeps coming up in my life, at least the last few months, has been masculinity. So I wanted to talk on that one. So we'll start with what is masculinity, right? So basically, masculinity is the possession of the traits that are traditionally associated with what being a man is. The thing is, it's 2018, so what is masculinity? Back in the day, it used to be the guys who'd work 12, 13, 14-hour days, long, hard, intense, laborious jobs, and then come home to a family where they'd already have a meal prepared for them. The wife was quite submissive in all regards, and he disciplined the family in that sort of case. So the big idea behind masculinity, 50 plus years ago, was a man gets a job, finds a wife, he pays to have the roof over her head and the head of the families, and that's how he gained his respect. But much has changed since then. Obviously, a lot with the feminism movements and all other political movements within the last 50 years has changed the dynamic on how we just relate to each other in general. So nowadays you find that with equality kind of, over the board, generally speaking, women make just as much money as men do. And that was one of the things that defined men as a man. He had financial control somewhat over his co-partner in that relationship. But if one partner is making just as much money as the other partner, who's really in control? And the problems we're having together are not just financial, it's just almost in every way that men and women relate to each other now. I was actually having a conversation with my friend not too long ago, basically just explaining to her, I don't think men know how to be men anymore. A lot of what men think they are or thought they should be are tied to almost their roles they play, because as boys we're almost trained to learn that you grow up, you go to school, maybe you get a good job and you take care of your family. But with that being said, taking care of your family can mean so many different things nowadays. So if a man's trained to do one thing and he finds out it's another thing now, he's kind of lost. And when people lose their sense of identity, that changes everything for them. So it's crazy because it's like the same time that men have kind of like lost their identity or don't know how to be men anymore, women have all of a sudden become really, really empowered. And this is a good thing. But the thing that comes with that is at times we don't know how to relate with each other anymore because of these like power struggles we have almost over who can make the decision here, whose place is it to talk about this topic, what is equality. Especially in 2018, everything is so like politically correct. Everyone wants everything to be the same and equal everywhere we go. But the fact is that's not the case. Just men and women are different. There are just fundamental things that make us different. And I think when we start to disown them or disregard them, it does create weird dynamics for how we cohabitate and get along and even have relationships together. Okay, so now we're fully aware of the problems, like basically men don't know how to be men anymore, and women have become empowered, and this has created a weird power balance dynamic where we almost don't know how to socialize with each other anymore, have relationships with each other, that sort of thing. So instead of just talking about the problems, I wanted to offer some solutions on what I think a man should be in 2018 and how this could potentially help you. Okay, so to me, there's three things that really make a man, especially in 2018. His ability to communicate, his emotional strength or athleticness, and his sense of identity. If a man can really hone down on these three things, he'll start to understand who he is in the world, how he can relate to the world, and how he can relate and grow relationships with women and men alike. So I'll start with the first one, communication. So communication is big, and I'll cover like 2 or 3 different platforms. So we'll cover social media, how we communicate now through social media, how we communicate in person, and also body language, because that's like a really big thing. So as far as social media goes, I don't think a lot of men are aware of how powerful that can be when it comes to representing themselves and who they are or who they want to be. So I definitely have a lot of male friends who aren't as active, and they don't think it's important, right? But for me, I understand that social media is really like a marketplace. You take Instagram, for example, right? You have two sides of Instagram to me. There's Flexigram, where everyone's just trying to like stunt and show off like all the great things that they have. And then you have Instagram, where like there's great content. People are putting stuff out there to help other people, and you can learn from that. Like I love that part of Instagram. So I almost see it as like a marketplace, and everyone is there trying to like give value or show value to someone. But if you don't, have a stall at the marketplace, you can't offer anything to anyone. And I don't think a lot of guys understand that. So I think it's actually important to be somewhat active, because it keeps you updated with what's happening right now. As far as it goes with just like communicating, let's say, personal messages and things like that. Again, I think that's why it's so important to be active, so you can almost understand the etiquette around those things, because a lot of communication is done digitally, right? So if we don't understand how to communicate like digitally, you're missing like half of the game. So that's definitely something men have to work on. Okay, so like secondly, in person, there's little things that we can do as men that almost change the dynamic of the room when we're in it, right? Whether it's like your voice tonality, your presence, the way you carry yourself, that sort of thing. And I think that with how things have changed so much in the last few years, I'm starting to see more and more just in everyday interactions, men are so quick to be like submissive in almost any interaction, whether it's with another man or another woman. So you'll have a guy like me with like somewhat of a deep voice. He'll have a conversation with a woman, right? Beautiful woman, for example. He'll see her, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" Right? They get this sense of like they gotta like shrivel up to be like accepted everywhere they go. I know, because like I was that guy. And this is so key, because I believe the reason for that is obviously in the past men were over dominating. Like we had these positions of power, we took advantage of almost any platform or opportunity we could get, even over women when it came to like physical strength or abuse or that sort of thing. And like in backlash of that, instead of just like honing that side of ourselves or our masculinity in, it's almost become this like overcompensation, because men are now generally scared to be called a racist or a bigot or a homophobe against anything or anyone. So it's almost like it compensates itself in this submissive nature that like we tend to carry like in everyday interactions. And I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. So if you can understand like where that's coming from and be aware of that, you can almost address the problem in like a healthy way, and it's not being over masculine or being oversensitive to everyone's feelings and emotions, but understanding like one is wrong and one is who you are, and how to like own it and balance it. So I'm here just to encourage you just to be a man, be aware of those things, but don't fall like too far either side, because it does have consequences, whether it's financial or looking at jail time because you did something stupid, or just even how you relate to each other and how we have relationships because of this like overcompensation of just wanting to be good and be like overly nice to everyone. It's important just to own what you have. You know what I mean? If you're tall, if you're short, whatever the case is, right? You probably can't hide it, and it's better to accept what it is and what it means for you, and let people deal with the rest. We're so we can get so into like having everyone accept us that we lose who we are, and that's one of the worst places you can be in. I've definitely been there. I know plenty of people have been there, still working on it. So for me, it's really important to just own who you are, what you are, and let people deal with the rest of it. And yeah, just on top of that, even when it comes to body language, right? Again, more and more places I go, like I'll be sitting on the train. This is like the most obvious one to me. Obviously, everyone has their headphones in, kind of like just in our own world. Don't want to interact with anyone because that's weird. Everyone is always so like downtrodden and like introverted in this like weird fetal position, as if like to say, I don't want you to see me. But I don't think people are aware of what they're actually doing. This shows people that obviously you want to be left alone, but obviously that you're unconfident, you're unsure of yourself, and those aren't things that are associated with masculinity. It's the opposite. It's like the decisiveness, it's the confidence, it's owning what's happening there. So yeah, that's like my little bit on communication. Okay, topic number 2. This one is emotional strength. So this is probably the biggest one for me for what I consider being a man, for so many different reasons, especially because in this time and age where everything is so politically correct, it's very easy just to go with the crowd on everything that everyone is saying, just in fear of like conflict or being judged or being disliked or whatever the case is, right? But for me, like a real man is a person who will stand by his morals, his values, what he understands to be right, no matter how people approve or disapprove of it. And yeah, it's crazy because I know like a handful of guys I know that if the whole world was like against them and told them they were wrong, they would still, stare that person in the face and tell them, no, you're wrong, like you move. Which is a big thing. I think it's very important, especially as young men, especially as people, just to understand who you are. Like, take time to understand what's important to you, what values are really important to you, and hold on to them. Don't change them for anything or anyone, regardless of how they may, react to it. In fact, some people might have more respect for you because even though it might be a unpopular decision or comment that you're making, they at least respect the fact you have the guts to say that, because not everyone can. So I definitely encourage like young men out there, if there's a set of standards or morals or codes that you live by, don't change them, don't bend them for anyone. And then like building on that, I think the other important thing is being aware of how important it is to be strong emotionally and athletically, emotionally as it is physically, right? I know a lot of guys who go to gym, train, that sort of thing. It's all good and well, but when they deal with whether it's a heartache, it's loss, it's rejection, it's someone just not agreeing with you, men obviously just don't have the same maturity as women do in a lot of these cases. And that's something that is so much more important now in 2018 than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. It occurred to me, I was reading this book, it's called, I think, The Purpose and the Power of Men by Dr. Miles Monroe, where, back in the 50s and 60s, as far as relationships went, right, when the man married a woman that had a house, he would just work all day, come home, eat, sex, sleep, that's it. So he didn't have to be emotionally aware, emotionally adaptable, he didn't even have to like relate to her as far as like love was concerned, right? He loved her, by the way, he took care of her. But like we know, like women can take care of themselves. So that affects how we relate to each other on so many different levels. As a man, we need to become more emotionally intelligent to what is happening. Not emotionally submissive, that's different, just aware, right? It's all about just being more aware of what's happening, and that ties into communication as well. Once you become aware of maybe what you're doing wrong or what you're not doing, you'll be able to communicate that better. So I definitely encourage guys, get out there, understand how to become more emotionally aware and emotionally strong. For me, whenever I go through something like quite tough emotionally, I believe in Jesus. So for me, I pray, I take time away just to meditate so I can deal with it. And then if I have to communicate with another person, I'll do so. But lashing out in anger or frustration or throwing a tantrum, whatever that is, that's immature. And as men, we can't do that. If you want to be a man in 2018, you have to understand how to express yourself in an adult sort of way. Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to speak on understanding of self, so identity. This is probably the biggest one. This relates to men and women, so it's just not like one, right? The sense of understanding who you are and yourself is so important. I can't talk about it enough. The more you understand about yourself and your purpose, and for me, why you were created, the further not only will you go in life, but the easier it's going to be to relate to the world and accept what's happening to you. A lot of people, they don't take time to understand themselves, and that's part of the reason they don't love themselves, they're not happy with themselves, they change things. It's tough, it's scary, but I think it's so important, especially as men, just to take time from socializing or doing whatever it is, just with ourselves, understand what our strengths are, what our flaws are, what we like, what we don't like, and almost like build a process, because we're very process oriented as men, on how we can start to understand and love ourselves more. Because the more we do that, the better we'll be able to relate with each other. We all know this, like really insecure people always have trouble relating to people because they almost feel like everyone's always taking shots at them, whether they were joking or not, and you don't want to be that guy, right? So definitely take the time out to like work on these things, understand yourself, This ties into obviously how we relate to each other, but just even like your purpose in life. What were you created to do, right? Were you, supposed to feed people? Were you supposed to become a doctor? Were you supposed to encourage people? Whatever the case is, it's so important that we understand what that is. But even more important than that is, as men, we need to make sure we don't tie the roles we have, as in the jobs that we do, into our identity. That is so dangerous because, especially as a millennial, we're known to move from job to job. We're more than likely not going to be that generation that stays in one position for 20 years. And I've seen a lot of men, young and old, when they lose a position or lose a role, they completely lose themselves. So if I could say one thing about this is, being a man is not tied to the role that you do. Being a man is tied to the characteristics and the understanding of who you are. So don't get that line, blended. Otherwise, it can lead to, plenty of bad things. Okay, and lastly, I just wanted to give examples on who I think historically and in modern days are great examples of what masculinity is, and are just like the pinnacle of men, like alpha males, and it's because they possess several traits. So I'll start with historically, and then I'll go to like the modern figures I can think of. So historically, ironically enough, I think of Jesus. And it's for so many, different reasons. I think one of the biggest ones for me was he didn't tie anything that he did or how he was a man to what he has. So, if you ever do read the Bible or read other historical texts on him, you'll understand that he was, brought up in a poor area. He was never a rich person, right? And with men, a lot of the times we can feel like, oh, if I just get this, or I do that, or I get to the next level, then I'll be a man. But he was a man before he had any of that, and that's what made him so influential as a figure throughout his lifetime. The other things I can think of is he was definitely a leader. People definitely looked up to him for advice and how to live their lives. He never brought people down, right? He wasn't so insecure that he had to spit on people to make himself feel good. He always understood that we had flaws, but he almost looked over them and just saw the goodness in us and brought us up. So that's what a real man does, whether it comes to his co-workers, his close friends, acquaintances, women, whatever the case is, he always brings people up. The real big one for me was, no matter who was in front of him, whether it was friend or foe, he would just tell it like it is. So again, people could tell him he's wrong, he's crazy, he shouldn't be doing this, he shouldn't be doing that, but he knew what was right in his mind and he did it. Again, I don't know how many men can do that nowadays, and that's such a big one. So that was definitely a big one for me. And then I think lastly, it would probably be, that was so good as well, probably be his emotional strength. Like when I read the text and when I think about it, like his best friends left him at one time, people told him he was this, people told him he was that, he was spit on, he was kicked on, X, Y, and Z, but he never harbored those emotions with bad intentions on other people. You know what I mean? I think as men, it's very natural to become angry and aggressive, but then we lash out and don't communicate it properly, even abuse a woman, like in the worst case scenario, which is like crazy to me. And he didn't do any of that in a time where he knew he was a king and everyone else couldn't see it. So I think that's crazy. So like the modern day examples I think of are people like Jay-Z, LeBron James, The Rock, Kobe Bryant, guys like this, because even though materialistically and resourcefully, like these guys are well off, so a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, but they're rich, and if I had this much money or this opportunity, I can do that. But it's really the opposite. The reason they are where they are is because of who they are, not what they have. So I can almost guarantee you, if each one of those guys lost everything they had today, they would still be able to get it back again because of what's inside of them, not what they were given in that sense. Sure, they're talented on that end, but talent only gets you so far in any arena. They've all had to sacrifice and work hard and have a strong identity of self, to be able to get to where they are. So if I could offer like one of the examples of like masculinity to people, it'd be like those guys. So yeah, guys, that's the topic of masculinity for this month. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to continue the conversation, just like personal message me, email me, whatever. Oh, and I almost forgot. One of the big things they all have in common is they do not give a crap what anyone thinks about them. And it's not in like a negative, I'm too like cool for school sort of way. It's just they're not going to let people's thoughts or ideas or identity or box that they have around them shape what they're going to do. with their lives, right? So I definitely had that as a goal last year. So by the time December 31st, 2017 came around, like I just didn't care, you know? And when you're able to like let go of that and people's ideas and thoughts, you start to like really elevate yourself, right? So like if I could, you know, wrap it up as like the things that, you know, make us men, obviously it's like the self-awareness of identity, who we are, our ability to be able to communicate with people, emotional strength. But if I did add one on it, is like just not giving a crap about what people think. So, you know, guys, I feel like if you, you know, you take a look at these people's lives, you try and build in these different areas of your lives, whether it's reading books, you know, watching YouTube videos, whatever it is, it's going to bring you closer to that goal of understanding yourself and what I think modern masculinity should be. So yeah, I love you guys. Have a blessed 2018.